Welcome, friends, to Tanked Up, the podcast all about video games and beer. I'm one of your hosts, Ben. It's episode 431, and I'm here with Adil
Hey!
and Lucy.
That was good timing because I just started my recording.
Perfect. Good. Let's get into the episode. Let's crack some beers. What are we drinking? Lucy, I believe you and I are twinning again on a beer this week. Adil, what are you drinking tonight?
I've got Vocation Special Edition Doppelganger DDH IPA, Pine, Tropical, and Citrus. It's a lovely
Nice.
purple can.
Ooh, I haven't seen a Vocation beer out in the wild, not in a supermarket, for ages.
I did get it at a supermarket.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Let me just read them flavor text. A bold and intense brew, double dry hop to release an ever-increasing cascade of fruity aromas with a delicate sweetness and a balancing earthy undertone. Strong aromas of sweet mango and stone fruit with zesty citrus, bitterness, and pine finish. It's Mosaic and Simcoe, and it is 6.7%.
All right.
Huh.
Nice. Lucy, why don't you tell the people what we're drinking this evening?
Yeah, we've moved well past dry January. We are dipping into the addiction again. We have got the annual release of Putty from Verdant. I think it was out in cans probably. It's probably only a week, 10 days ago or something.
About that, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's still relatively fresh, but this is the 8% double IPA. It's got Azaka, Galaxy, and Mosaic in it. And the little slogan this year is "Let's stick together." There's no flavor text on the can, but at this point, if you've been listening to us for even just over a year, you probably know what Putty is by this time. Yeah.
Yeah. It was canned on the 20th of Jan. So it's about 3-ish weeks old.
Yeah.
They do give a decent 6 months on the best before date. And just on the bottom, I suppose that all say it. Mine says up the putt. Up the putt.
Yes,
3.
mine does as well. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a nice little Easter egg.
It is. And I didn't. I suppose I must have read the thing that says "Let's stick together," because I was going to say out of dry January into sticky February, but I thought better of it. But interestingly, I haven't drank since through February. Really, my first beers were last night.
Oh yeah.
So I've been off it for about 6 weeks now. So
this is the first alcoholic beer I'm having in the home so far this year.
right.
So I think those non-alcoholic beers have done us well so far, and it's just I'm perfectly happy just to have a non-alcoholic beer instead of the regular thing. I'm not craving
Absolutely.
the alcohol as much.
That's a big shift from this time last year. Well, I recall last year's dry January was started with some optimism, or optimism, I suppose.
Yes.
And there was disappointment all around. Except I don't know if I participated. I think I had 1 week, and it was also not great. But I've had the odd ones in the interim and seen the difference. And Lucy, you have as well. So
Yeah.
The world might be going to hell,
Massively.
but people are figuring out some decent things.
Absolutely, it seems like there's just been a massive shift in the last 12 months. We've had a breakthrough. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also because it's extended out to multiple styles and things as well. It's not just a 0% lager, and it's not just a 0% kind of pale. We're getting West Coasts. We're getting a variety of different styles of beer as well in that lower percentage. But not even these sort of the alcohol-free ones. Even like even lower than table beers, micro IPAs or kind of whatever they call them, that kind of 1-2% beer as well. You're going kind of low, and even they are getting better as well. I remember having sort of a micro IPA, something like 2.5%, 5 or so years ago, maybe not quite that long. But again, it's just been very, very weak, very, very light in flavour. And now, that Wiper and True and the Daya beer I had the other day, which is 1.5, well, 1.8, something like that. I didn't necessarily enjoy the flavor as much, but it was full of flavor, and there was, it was a reasonably robust beer. So, yeah, breweries are definitely getting better. And just to round that out, this is the cheapy, really cheap beer that I've been drinking. Bavaria, just from Holland, 0% beer, and it's just very easy to drink.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge market now, so the money's there, so it's like
Capitalism be
reason to
capitalisming.
invest in it.
Mm.
Yes. Unfortunately. But yeah, it's like, okay, we'll invest the money now because we can make money from it. Because it's a massive portion of the industry now. So
Yeah, I mean the problem is it probably could have happened sooner, except you need someone to try and show there's a market there for people to want to enter the market, and this is like one of the failures of capitalism breeds innovation. Like only if you can, once you get big enough, you don't try new things. You only do it when it's tried and tested. But once you hit that threshold, suddenly everyone wants to rush in because there's a market, and line got to go up.
Absolutely. Let's come back to you, Adil, for the Vocation. How's that?
So it's a lovely hazy sort of somewhere yellowier than honey. It's got an orange tone, so it's not quite straw in person. I know it probably looks a little green yellowy on the screen. It does have a really lovely mango. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it said something about stone fruit. I'm getting mango with like an underlay tone of specifically like dried apricot. You know when you like crack open a bottle of dried apricot and you get that like yeah. So imagine that with like half the mustiness and the 10th of the strength. That's what the nose is like mostly mango and has this dried apricot nose undertone. Undernose? Mustache? Oh, that's really lovely. So I'm getting it's surprisingly sweeter than I would have thought from the nose, in that like the citrus is more forward. The nose didn't really have much of it, but it's like a sweet citrus, almost like a clementine, with the tropical fruit underneath that quite a bit. They said finishing with pine, and I feel like it's finishing a little more bitter than, given that it has this sweet push, but I'm not getting like piney notes so much as a light bittering finish, which is fine, right? Like it finishes like a beer. It does, that sweetness is a bit lingering, but it still has enough bitterness that the finish being 20-30 seconds long isn't too sweet, right? I mean, it's still a bit sweet. It reminds me of that flavor, but it still feels like I had a beer. What is it, 6.7? Is that what it was? Yeah. Okay, interesting. Right, because it's a double dry hopped IPA, not a double IPA. I see the D and the IPA, and my brain just is like, must be strong.
it's meant to be more hoppy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. Like I said, I'm curious once I've had like maybe a third of it, whether that like underlying sweetness my palate will get used to, and some of the other flavors will come out. Because like I said, after once you've quaffed, give it a couple seconds. The first thing that's clearly sticking around is the sweetness. It's only when that starts to taper that I notice that bittering, which again, reasonable balance. But I wouldn't mind a little more of that depth of that initial hit throughout, past it's been seconds since I swallowed the beer. But it's really good. Oh, actually, now that I've talked for a bit since a sip, yeah, it feels a bit drying in my mouth, and I realized, I think the sweetness was kind of misleading me for how much of the bittering is there. And so yeah, like I said, I'm super curious if this is one of those where it's just got enough sweetness that until your palate gets used to it, you don't notice as much. But we'll find out in a
Okay.
bit. How are your beers?
Smells lovely.
Yeah, it reminds me of Solero, which for people who don't know is like is it mango flavored ice cream? But it's like smelt the mango, and then it
Mm.
smelt like, oh, that kind of like, I don't know, like slightly vanilla lactose kind of
Hmm.
smell to it as well. Don't know if you're picking that up on that, but yeah, it just reminded me of Solero like instantly.
Yeah, I don't know whether I didn't pick up the Solero from the nose necessarily, but now you've said
Mm,
it, absolutely, you do get that in there. It's got that like creamy kind of
hmm
note to that nose as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
Mm. It's an interesting
Yeah.
flavor because a lot of that comes through in the flavor, but there's this big bitterness to
Yeah,
it
yeah.
in
It's
that initial kind of taste.
like a like oniony, like kind of very
Mm.
resinous, like piney bitterness. That yeah, like that sweetness is just only there like at the beginning,
Hmm.
which is what I like. It's like I don't like beers that are just too sweet or overly cloying. I prefer like medium to high bitterness. And yeah, it's one of those where it's like we always forget what the last Putty tastes like.
Yeah.
Mm.
But just like the way it's marketed and like the way it looks, and you think you're gonna just get like a massive like juice bomb,
Mm.
like that
Mm.
is mainly fruit forward. But this very much is. I'd say it's probably more leaning into that bitterness, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fruitiness is still there. It sort of
Hmm
sits underneath almost. And that bitterness is taking that forefront, that big flavour running through. But the sweetness does sit underneath it and kind of both
Yeah,
hit you at the beginning, or as you say, Lucy, the sweetness kind of comes in, but that bitterness rushes forward pretty quickly
yeah.
and dulls down that sweetness. But as the bitterness fades, the sweetness kind of it comes through slightly
It's
more. It's
still
still there at
yeah.
the same level, but you experience it a little bit more, and it just sort of sits as a nice underlying sort of flavour to it. But yeah,
It's
I think where you sort of say resinous was a
mm,
good kind of description of this,
yeah.
and I think it's kind of right in the way that it's a little bit. It's not quite chewy, but it's almost.
Slightly
Mm.
sticky February-ish. Yeah. Like that hop stickiness. Yeah, just
Mm.
like um, yeah, it's quite dry. Um,
Yes.
It's like I want to keep going back for more, but it's like already getting that kind of alcohol burn from the eight
Mm.
percent, and it's like, oh, this is one where it's like, oh, it's a bit dry, and that high bitterness is like kind of drying my mouth out, and it's like I
Hmm.
want to go back for more, but I'm just going to intensify the problem. So this is probably one. It's just like, yeah, I'll let it sit for a bit.
Yeah, and because the burn, it sort of sits there for quite a while as well.
Mhm.
As you said, it's dry. You want to go back, but you don't kind of need to. Or that's at least I feel it sits with you long enough. Yes, the
Mhm.
sweetness kind of fades much quicker than sort of the bitterness and the burn that sits there as well. But um, yeah, it's inviting in a kind of standoffish sort of way. It's sort of
Mhm.
like come back for more, but just relax. Don't be too quick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is I don't know. I was at Attic yesterday, and
Mm.
a lot of their beers really have the opposite effect, where it's like, oh, that is just like a very like soft and not watery in a like thin texture way, but it's like it's a very wet finish, and it's like, oh, I can luxuriate on this and not feel
Mm.
like everything's drying out. Whereas this is like a bit of the opposite, which not a bad thing. It's as I say, like don't usually get beers that really lean into the bitterness, unless it's like, a particular style, like a West Coast IPA
Mm.
or something. So, but yeah, it's good. I don't know if it reaches the heights of like previous putties. This seems like this is just a very good and well-made beer.
Mhm.
But I think we've always been on the side of like, has it really deserved that hype that it's had over the years? It's a very well-made beer, but is it? It's not one that I would, ravage the shelves for.
Sure.
Um, I think like maybe a day a beer of similar strength, like the oh gosh, which beer is it that they make an 8% version of, and it's like they make like a 4% version, an 8% version of it, and it's like the 8% version is just like, yeah, that's a banger. That's worth, traveling to the shops for. But yeah, not underwhelmed, but just like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's good.
Yeah,
Decent.
I'd completely agree with that sentiment.
Hmm.
I'm not going to rush back to the shop to go and buy another one.
No.
I think previous years, maybe not even last year, but previous years to that, I think it was more of a core. This is different. This is doing something more unique than kind of anything we have had recently. And I think, as we probably extolled last year, Putty is kind of almost one of the last event beers of the of now times.
Mhm.
Really, you don't get a huge amount. I don't know whether Cannonball Run still exists anymore. I think
I
Magic Rock are
doubt
kind of
it.
holding on by their fingertips currently to being an
Yeah,
actual brewery. Um,
weren't they bought by somebody
yeah, I
recently,
can't remember who they've been bought by
which group
now, but
it was, yeah.
yeah,
Mm,
before Pure picked up at the same time by the
I
same
think so,
company as
yeah.
Yeah, I
well.
think that's right.
Yeah, and for Pure weren't going to brew anymore. They were going to actually brew up at Magic Rock. There's some rumblings of stuff in that regard. But yeah, owned by an investment company ultimately now.
Mm.
Which I think they were before, but now just a different investment, a bigger investment company investing in other things as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those where it's like, oh, Putty's out, great, let's go and pick one up,
Hmm.
and being like, good, this is decent, I enjoy it, fine, great, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's fine.
Mhm.
Doesn't need to be don't need to hoard all of the tins or clear the shelves of every event beer that ever comes out. Some can just be
No.
like, cool, this is fine.
Yeah, I think it's more just the signifying that it's like January's over, ushering in like, early spring, and it's
Hmm.
like, this has that kind of like, very fresh kind of like this that resiny, hoppy kind of thing, and it's like the green's coming back.
Mm.
It's not all grey and white, brown. There's green on the horizon. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I was gonna just type in Putty 24. Maybe I'll put in Verdant first, just to
Help the algorithm is out.
yeah, just to see what hops it had in it. Because this is Azaka, Galaxy, and Mosaic.
Mm.
Does Untapped tell me what the hops are in it? It does not.
Mm.
On the description, at least. Anyway, um, don't know. Don't know. Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah, getting like that hints of Mosaic has always like try and describe it like that kind of lavender kind of like taste to it, like very floral.
Mm.
So, you know, yeah, it's good. It's good. The triple IPA Putty is coming out, I think in a week's time or something. So,
Hmm.
um, maybe if I see that, I'll pick it up. But if that's like this, might be even harder to, you know, not stomach, but like if it's this dry and it's triple IPA, then it's like might have to have a glass of water next to me as I
Yeah.
drink it.
Or even a glass of orange juice just to dull it down very slightly. I think it's slightly less. Having a quick look, it says so going on to Verdant's site, there's a blog post about the release of Putty in 2024. And this says, I don't know whether these are just in alphabetical order of Azaka, Galaxy, and Mosaic, but in 2024 it says they've got equal parts Mosaic and Galaxy, and slightly less Azaka. I would imagine if I then find, if I go to Verdant and have a look for Putty 2025, we'll see what they say about that. If you want to vamp for 30 seconds whilst I
Yeah,
try and have
yeah.
a look for it.
I don't know. I think because Azaka is that from like New Zealand? Is that like a Antipodean hop? Is that where it's from?
Think so?
Yeah, because I mean I always get them slightly confused because like Motorwecker I feel like has that like kind of vinous kind of quality
Hmm.
to it. So I don't know if Azaka's anything kind of similar. Um, but they blend well together. That's for sure.
Oh, interesting. I think this is exactly the same.
Okay.
Let me hang on, let me go back on another tab and just try and pick up that text that they had on their website. Since the inaugural success, Putty has been an annual release in January, and of course, we've stuck to the original recipe for this double IPA. It says exactly the same for this year's as well. Since the inaugural success, Putty is an annual release. They've just copy and pasted it because maybe it is exactly the same.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see what that difference might be. And again, their flavored text or their notes on here, yeah, mango, passion fruit, peach, with hints of resinous pine. So we hit pretty much all of those notes with what we were getting from it. So yeah, it'd be interesting to know what the difference is. And with a beer like this, you don't really want to be keeping it for a year to do like a 24 versus 25 kind of tasting,
Yeah, no.
because they will be very, very different in that
Maybe
sort of
it's just
sense.
the
Giving that
same
one,
recipe,
yeah.
Like a lot of breweries just do that. Like don't even tinker much. It's like, okay, it's gonna be this many kilograms of dry hopping at this time at
Hmm.
this, point, and this is how much is gonna go into the whirlpool, etc., etc. Sometimes they do just keep the exact if it ain't broke, basically, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Good. Okay, nice. Let's enjoy these beers then, and talk about some video games for a little bit. It's been a couple of weeks since we recorded, so there's been a bit of time to play. But I know, Adil, you've had a lot of marking, a lot of work to do. Lucy, you were ill as well for a little, and I've had a fuck ton of
Yeah.
work to crack on with. So has anyone played anything? Has anyone had some time?
I
I've
cracked
played the
open
wonderful
Balatro
game of
today,
admin.
but I'm not going to talk about. Yeah, we've all played adulting. It sucks. 0 out of 10. Um, I did today play a demo of the next game in the apparently a series now, the Duck Detective series. I
Oh,
played the
Oh,
short demo for I can't remember what the subtitle for this one is, but it's basically the same game, but I think they're just gonna go a little bit bigger in scope and have a few quality of life additions to it. Like I think in the first game when you looked at clues, it's basically a to roll back, it's a like a mystery puzzle game. It's very light-hearted and very kid-friendly because it's about a duck who's actually got like an addiction to bread, which is quite funny. He's a recovering breadaholic like me. Um, and yeah, it's very light-hearted and it's kind of like Obra Dinn slash Case of the Golden Idol light, kid-friendly, where you're just looking in the environment for clues and basically have these uh, you know, boxes that you have to fill in, like the name of characters and their motivations, and just putting the right verb or noun in the right place. It's
mm,
very simple, but it's very charming. I think that's where the first game was probably very 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 simple, very dumbed down, but it's like the charm of it and the colourful nature of it and the really good voice acting is what brought it up to a standard. Whereas like yeah, make a sequel and I'll buy and play the
hmm.
sequel. Um, but yeah, it's just very short 20-minute demo or something.
nice.
You're instead of like in the first one, you're sort of solving a mystery of like why somebody's sandwiches are getting stolen at an office, and then that turns into like, oh, it's actually like somebody drug smuggling across the East Germany, West Germany border
Nice.
for some reason. In this one, you're going glamping in a sanatorium, so just weird, whimsical kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. This one's titled "The Ghost of Glamping."
Ah, is it really?
Yep.
Amazing. Glamping in the
yeah.
Sanatorium was the title of my poetry book I wrote in high school.
I would read that. But yeah, it, it just seems like it's got more quality of life things like it. I don't think in the first game when you looked at a clue, um, it basically in this one it puts it in like your evidence book, so you never have to walk back to where that clue was to look at it again. It just pops up in your like little book. And it seems like yeah, they're just going to go for a bigger scope. I mean, the last game was probably like 4 different rooms in like an
Mhm.
office, and that was it. Whereas this is like, it looks like, okay, we're gonna go to different areas in this sanatorium and stuff like that. It already seems bigger from the 20-minute demo. So yeah, it's I don't know when it's out. I imagine this year, but it got
It-
announced like pretty quickly after the first one. So it was like, oh, cool. Yes,
yeah.
make more.
Steam just says 2025 currently.
Yeah. Um, yeah, like first one really charming. I'm definitely, if not day one or week one, it's going to be definitely one that's on my list.
Hmm.
Because the first one was priced very fairly. I think it was like under a tenner as well. So yeah,
Yeah, it's currently the Duck Detective, the Secret Salami, which is the first game,
yeah.
is £8.50 currently with a
Well, there you
15%
go.
discount until the 24th of Feb, so 7.22 currently.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, no brainer. Pick it up. It's fun.
nice, nice. Yeah,
Mm.
and the Ghost of Glamping currently, yeah, as Lucy says, the demo is available. There is a demo fest at the moment, isn't there? I think on Steam or
I
something
think
like
it's
that as well.
some point this month, but I think it's just something where it's like,
Um,
oh, a lot of demos are just popping up like outside of these demo fests,
Hmm,
and it's like, yes, good. We're getting back to that, and I think less games are pulling demos after they're out or outside of the fest as well. So it's like
yeah,
this is what we want. Yeah.
absolutely. Um, Good, nice. I will jump in with a quick game that I played a very, very small amount of, but in the similar kind of vein. It's not a demo, but it is a prototype. It's called Tiny Towns by VFQD over on itch. It's kind of one of
Oh.
those name your own price titles, and you just download the working files for it. It is kind of a mini town builder. Um,
Mm.
but you are I can't remember what you are, a duke or a baron or some kind of landowner who is in dire straits and has done something to annoy the queen of the land. So you get sent to this island, and essentially you have to make a new settlement and pay the queen tax. And if you don't pay enough tax after so many turns, that's kind of your game over state. But you're presented every turn with 3 buildings or 3 items to be able to place on your little island map, and each of those has different qualifiers to earn you coins. So you might have a logging camp or something that gives you coins every turn or every 3 turns for being in proximity to trees, or an apiary for bees, which again gives you coins if in proximity when you place it to flowers that are on your map. So you're kind of strategically working a map with the resources that are on there to build out the most proficient town, I suppose, for making enough coins to satisfy the every 5 or 6 turn payment that you have to make to the queen. I haven't finished the first map. There's 4 maps. Well, I've got up to the last turn on the first map so far. Again, I've not spent a huge amount of time with it. I've played maybe an hour over 4 different playthroughs, probably something like that. Maybe more like 20 minutes a playthrough, and it's very nice. It's very easygoing. It explains itself very well. I think there's a couple of bits of the very pixelated art that are trying to be slightly too detailed for the size of the item that you're getting and the way that you're placing it on the map. So there's a little bit of confusion on a couple of bits, but there's enough text on there. Exactly, all the little bits. But there's enough text when you're hovering or picking an item to say, okay, great, I know what this is. It's when that text says this reacts to, or you get +2 coins if placing next to, and then there's this tiny little very pixelated item of a thing, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. I got no idea what that is, and I basically just pick the building up and just hover it around the map, and very nicely it tells me what's generated as I'm kind of about to put it in its area of effect, and the proximity that it picks up. So I'm enjoying it in sort of trying to optimize the placement of these different buildings and how they kind of combine. And it builds itself out. You know, you've got a lot of stuff around sort of a forester, and then a sawmill and a lumberjack, or then you have like a hunter that can't be near any of those things, so you get negatives for those. You've then got sort of like monuments and parks and different types of housing that all kind of feed into additional coins and things for each other. There's sort of farming and lots of different options on this to start building out lots of towns. But as I say, it's like a prototype. Basically, they put this on itch. It was only put up maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. Does it tell me when it was put on? Pretty sure
Usually
it
tells you the updates.
does.
19th of January 2025.
Yeah, more info.
looks like.
So yeah, published 26 days ago. So it's been up for a few weeks, but it's a fun little experience to play. And I would imagine they're using this to decide whether they want to build it out as a full experience. But actually, it's like a little game for. I think they suggested something like £6 for it.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, yeah, all right, I'll pay that, fine. So yeah, and I've had an hour's, if not slightly more, fun out of it, and I haven't even done the first map. So it's something that I will go, cool, I've got 20 minutes of downtime. Let's just actually I did a bit naughty and did a CPD the other day and just played it in the background whilst I'm listening to people talk about equality and diversity and inclusion and things. But it's kind of, it's one of those where it's very easy going. You could just place a bunch of stuff, come away from it, do whatever else you're kind of doing, and just come back to it whenever you wanted. You know, there's no sort of urgency to it. There's no time limits or things like that. It's turn based, so you go, I've got 6 turns to make 60 coins. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm already auto generating 15 every 3 turns, so I know I'll get 30 before that 6th turn. So actually, I've only got to generate another 30 over these 6 turns. So let's kind of think about it a little bit and build it out. And you get the idea, kind of, you get the general gist of it after the first sort of run or the first play. And then you start to actually think about how you're optimizing these things on the subsequent runs. And so, yeah, my 4th one, I think I got up to, I can't remember what it was. You needed to pay 150 coins. And I think I made 138 or something like that by the last turn. So it just went like literally last turn. You haven't done it. You have been exiled. I'm like, again. Oh dear, there's just not enough islands for me to keep bouncing to keep being exiled.
So it's like a tighter game loop in that you're not supposed to like pass the beginning levels. You're supposed to figure out how to pass, kind of thing.
I mean, you probably could figure it out in the first, on your first playthrough, perhaps.
Right. But it's the interconnectedness that allows you to make more money than something. It's not like, I'm saying it sounds like it's not so flat-footed that you're like, some quick mental math, they'll just put these here and that guy there, and then I'll get close. You have to do a lot. There's dependencies and like bonuses enough that you won't immediately see.
Absolutely. And even with what I've done, I won't have unlocked anywhere near all of the buildings so far. In the on the itch page, It says construct housing, agriculture, industry, commerce, and military structures. And I've not got to any military structures. I don't think I've really got to many commerce ones yet either. There was a brewery, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, which
Why
I
don't
think
we
if
just make the brewery and not the, weapons of war?
I mean that would
And
be
just
good.
live
Absolutely.
harmoniously. Yeah.
Yeah. I think can't remember. I think because yeah, there was a brewery because if you placed it near the apiary, you got bonuses. But once you'd unlock the brewery, you then unlock hop
Ooh,
fields as
get that
well.
Ooh.
mead.
So you can then,
Nice.
and then when you're putting your hop fields next to your windmills, they get bonuses. If you put them next to a well, I think some of the items like apple orchards and those kinds of things, they auto pop when you place them next to a well. Otherwise, they take 2 or 3 turns to basically grow and then generate income for you. So there's a bunch of different mechanics in all of these little constructs and different buildings and things. So
Mm,
it's very well thought out as well
yeah.
in that. Yeah, but I've enjoyed that. I think it's a good shout out for something just to be like, cool. I've got 20 minutes. Let's just have something that will tax me slightly, but
Hmm.
not be not give me any issues in terms of the senses of urgency or anything like that. It's a very calm, very cool kind of experience.
I've got something similar to that, which
Mm.
is well, it's an idle game, so it's like even less involved. It's called Ropuka's. Hold on, let me go. Ropuka's Island. Sorry, Ropuka's Idle Island. Ropuka spelled Ropuka. Um, yeah, I just saw an article about this. It's something that just like sits on your desktop.
Mm.
I believe they made the developers, what are their names? Store page. Uh, Several people, but I think overall their title is called Mockzan, spelled Moczan.
Hmm.
No, I think this is their only game. New releases. What about just all games? Okay. No, this seems to be their only game, but yeah, it's just basically a little frog in his garden, just using his shears and chopping grass. It's like, you're just like, okay, the more grass he chops, it's like, okay, um, we're gonna do these upgrades where you chop the grass quicker, or the grass grows back quicker, or the amount of coins that you get from the grass is more, or we need to take less rest in between. And yeah, it's just there, it sits on your desktop whilst I'm doing my cryptic crosswords. Um, and that's it. Numbers go up. Line go up as Neil said. It's just yeah, the truly most idle of idle games. But yeah, look, it's very serene. Can have like bird sound playing in the background, and it's like yeah,
Nice.
just little cosmetic things where you can change like the color of his hut and his deck chair that he needs to sit on when he gets tired, and it's just like yeah, it's an idle game. But it's not like, oh, I'm taking over the world in like Universal Paperclip and or Cookie Clicker or anything like that.
So it's in the video on Steam. It
Mhm.
just kind of shows it on a desktop, but the desktop is in a similar art style to the island, which I like, which is this sort of
Right,
watercolor kind
yeah.
of art style. Does it actually sit over your desktop as a little
Yeah,
island? Okay, cool.
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
It's
it's
like a
not
widget.
you don't have to like alt tab to it. Yeah, it's like a
Mm.
widget. Yeah. It's not it's just and you can resize it, you can make it as small as you want, as big as you want. You can move it anywhere you need over the screen. As I say, you can turn the music on or off, or you know, music and sound effects. So it's like, yeah, it can just sit there in the corner, just running away, running your Steam achievements, um, and realizing it's probably like mining Bitcoin in the background or something like that.
That's why it's only
Yeah.
£3.40 because it's actually just generating a bunch of wealth for somebody else.
Yeah.
Somewhere else, just using all of your process. Like, why is my computer
Hmm.
so slow right now? I'm
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
clearly just writing a Word document. What's going on?
I mean, this laptop is always on fire anyway. It's a, I least said about it the better. But yeah, it does get the fans going. So I do wonder if it wasn't this laptop, I would wonder, okay, what's going on? But this is just
Mm.
a laptop that likes to make noise anyway. But yeah, because I was just browsing some other like idle games, and there was something called it's called Rusty's Retirement, uh, which is on Steam also, I believe. But I was like, okay, this looks too involved. This doesn't look
Mm.
like an idle game anymore. This looks like, yeah, we're getting the calculator out in Cookie Clicker and stuff like that. So yeah, this is truly. I mean, it reflects the price. It's like absolutely just like a nice little widget for your home screen. Um,
Nice.
yeah, Rusty's Retirement looks like Stardew Valley. It looks involved, and it's like no, no, thank you. So
Mm.
yeah.
It's interesting. Widgets came and went quite swiftly, didn't they? Did they come in with Vista or a different? I can't
I
remember which
did, I
version of
know.
Windows they kind of came in as the new hot
Mm.
thing, and then it was like the next version of Windows was like,
Oh,
no, not
they're
doing that anymore.
they're still there in
Mm.
Windows 11. It's just
Are they?
they're to the left, and because of the way I like configure like customize Windows, they get in my way, so I have to disable them,
Yeah.
and they make it
Oh yeah, that little
harder.
crap thing down there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um. Yeah. That's annoying. Yeah.
yeah, you can get rid of them.
Yeah. I know. I know.
Maybe they're not. I can't. I
Just
can't
I
ever
just
remember experiencing them on Windows 10.
They were there.
Hmm.
It's like
It's
it's
just never, yeah, it's just never usually a problem for me because it's like, oh, all my pinned things on my taskbar, I don't need that much real estate, but it's like, and mine just shows me the weather, and it's
yeah.
like, okay,
It, like a panel slides in from the left and has like, right? Is that right? I can't remember. Right. Stuff.
mine is just locked there.
Okay.
I said it was annoying because I haven't changed it on this one, but on the work laptop, it's like, well, get out of my way,
Yeah.
please. Yeah, but on this one, it's just like, yeah, it's just pinned there. It's just showing me weather.
Okay.
And
Okay.
FTSE or something like Dow Jones, like yes, the market's
Yeah. That
crashed or
crap.
whatever. It's like I'm not really paying attention to it.
Right. Oh, so okay. I do have a like on Windows 10 down in the bottom right, by my different
System tray?
tasks. It's all I've just got. It currently just says light rain, 3 degrees.
Oh yeah.
Light
So
rain.
that
When I hover over
Yeah,
it, it brings up a
yeah.
news feed.
yeah.
Um,
That's the
yeah.
thing.
Okay,
I
widgets
must got the
off.
side wrong.
There we go.
Fair. I've never
Yeah.
really look at it. I only ever suddenly I'll accidentally hover over it and
Yeah.
it will pop up every now and again. Yes.
Are there
Okay.
any decent widgets? How do I get the widgets? How do I have a look at the widget? Because right now I'm just like widgets on and off.
Just
Are there
Google
any?
where is widgets and see what happens. Just go on the journey.
Are there any? Because I don't know.
I,
Like
I think that
I used to like the
yeah.
widgets on. Was it Vista?
Mm,
Was it
It might not have been
Windows
Vista.
7?
this is
It might have
pretty.
been 7.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably 7
Yeah, because I actually liked them. Because
or
yeah, I used
8
to get
because it
all
wasn't
manner
8
of
where they
nonsense.
like
Why do
fucked with everything and never got cross, and then they took like a couple versions to try and undo it.
why didn't we get a 9?
That was
Because
the
it
Windows
breaks everything,
8
doesn't it?
fix, right? In the middle.
The Millennium two, the Y2K bug. That's why.
No. The
It's
real
fine.
question is,
Didn't we have Windows? Didn't we go again? We go Windows 98, then Windows 2000.
well, that was because of it was only a networking commercial product, not a consumer product.
Oh,
But then they
'cause
followed it up with
we get
the
Windows NT.
no, so NT, so it goes Windows 95, 98, NT in the middle because
NT,
it's the
yep.
professional one. Then 2000,
Yep.
and then they went ME Millennium Edition, which
Yep.
was
Then XP.
garbage because they tried to make everything bubbly and shit. And then they made
Yep.
XP, which everyone loved, much like 95. And then what's after XP?
Vista after XP. Isn't it?
Vista, which people hated because it made everything bubbly again. And then 7 was all right, and then 8 was putting more
I like
stupid
7.
shit than instead of just giving you the thing that you knew how to use.
And then 10 seemed to just reset everything almost.
Yeah, well,
didn't
10 kept some of the bits of 7, but undid a lot of the cosmetic stuff. And then 11
Let's go back to 3.1
Yeah,
to make it easier. Go back to
less said
3.1.
about it. I mean, yeah, progressively hate them more and more. But yeah, I like 7, especially if that's the one with the widgets and stuff. Because yeah, you can just have like a car dash or something like that, which just read all your CPU and GPU usage,
Yep,
and it's like, yeah, just
yep,
give me that, you
absolutely.
know?
Yeah,
Mm.
some very fancy looking
Yeah, like look like a
performance thing.
Porsche.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
brilliant.
uh,
Nice, good. I will, as we're talking about nice, calm experiences, short experiences, I'm going to take us in the opposite direction and talk about something which is not calm in any way
all right.
whatsoever, or not a short experience either. I've been playing Hyperlight Breaker.
Mm.
So this is the not really sequel in any way at all to Hyperlight Drifter. It's kind of a game just set in the same universe, let's say. So it's made by Heart Machine. It's the only thing I think really that's similar with Hyperlight Drifter into Hyperlight Breaker is the sort of the aesthetic, really. They've taken kind of the slightly digital, ruinous, overgrown kind of environments, the tones, the color tones, the palettes, those kinds of things, and brought it into Breaker. But Hyperlight Breaker is a third person roguelike, basically. And you, interestingly, I think it does it slightly more than just a standard roguelike. You inhabit this world for 4 different runs. So you go into you're a breaker. You pick your character. You pick sort of the class that you want to be and the equipment that you want to run with, and then you get put into a world, and you have to try and break the world ultimately. And to
Okay.
do so, you have to beat a certain amount of bosses, and you have to get keys to access the bosses, and then get out. So it's like an extraction
Okay.
thing as well.
Roguelike? Is it is it roguelike? Sorry.
So it is, yes, yes.
Yeah. And
You
procedurally generated.
And so procedurally generated in that you jump into the first world. If you die or you extract, that is your
Mm.
first run. You get basically 4 runs at that procedurally generated world.
Okay.
Otherwise, at the end of the run 4, except for character upgrades, which you're making, which are persistent throughout this, any equipment and those kinds of things are lost, basically. And each
Okay.
time you come out of a run, so if you die and you go back to your sort of little hub world, some of the items you've got on you, everything has degradation. So there might just be 2 points on an item. So if you die, you lose one of those points. It's only got 1 run left in it. And so
Mm.
you're constantly doing a bit of inventory management in terms of sort of the temporary upgrades that you can get kind of on your runs, the temporary weapons and things that you get on your runs as well. But it has just such an insane sense of urgency to it,
Mm.
because whilst you're moving around the environment looking for these, I can't remember what they call them, but you're looking for items to allow you access to the bosses, and obviously you're looking for upgrades and things like that to make you a bit better to fight those bosses every so often. And I can't quite figure out if it's a timed thing, if it's a killing enemies in the world thing, or a combination of the two. The world just drops a squad of enemies on top of you. So you could just be moving around the environment, minding your own business, and suddenly you've hit the threshold, and these enemies just drop down on top
Yeah,
of you to have to
like the
fight.
cursed
There's
moon or whatever in Zelda.
yeah, there's
Mm.
no downtime in this game
Mm.
at all. You might get 30 seconds, and then you're moving through the environment, and there's another squad of enemies around the corner, or you buy an item, and there's like a mini boss or something like that, or like an elite enemy, and mini bosses drop into the environment. I had a run where this kind of, I suppose it's like a mini boss dropped in. I'm like, oh shit, I've got barely any health. I'm really not doing very well on this run. I'm going to extract and take the items that I've got with me. And I got to the extraction point, and to extract, you've got to basically hold out and fight the enemies that appear in the extraction point, which is fine because they're low level ones. You get maybe like 3 that you've got to fight, then 6 will appear, and then like 10 will appear. You kill them all, and you get to extract. This mini boss, basically, and I don't know whether it's a bug, but you can't leave the big square that you're on. This mini boss just shot through the field of this square and just kept shooting at me whilst I'm trying to fight all of these other enemies. And I'm like, got no chance, have I? Just died really quickly trying to extract out of this. I'm like, well, I was going to leave anyway.
Yeah.
Now I've died and I've lost sort of points and things, and this wasn't so good. But I think it's in early access. I think it's got a lot of good points and it's got some stuff going for it, but it needs a lot of refinement.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a bit of it wants to be a roguelike in sort of its exploration in terms of the progressive or persistent upgrades that you get with your characters, but the degradation of items and the usability of items and those kinds of things. But it's also a bit of a bullet hell. You know, it's kind
That's
of
the only thing that I've liked so far. You said that it's somewhat of a bullet hell, but
yeah.
in a 3D version, because this is 3D, isn't it?
Yep. Yep.
That doesn't sound like fun. Also,
No, it's basically
funny.
I don't know whether either of you played it because it's a PS5 exclusive, but I think I spoke about Returnal a little bit last year when I picked
I
it
remember
up.
you talking about it.
It reminded me of that. Yeah,
It's very similar to Returnal. A little bit more focus on melee combat. So you have got a both a melee and a ranged weapon, and you can kind of jump between the two of them. I think Hyperlight Breaker though, it wants you to play this co-op, so you can be in the world with 2 other people as well. So the 3 of us could all play it in the same instance together. And I don't know what the scaling is like. I don't know how that works because I've not experienced any of that side of things. I've only just played. I've played about. What have I done? I have played about 1.5 hours roughly of this, which again is probably like 4 or 5 runs. I think I'm in my. I think I'm in my my 3rd run of my 2nd world, let's say, or my 2nd reset. So they're probably about 15-20 minutes a run, dependent on, because I'm early on. I would imagine that by the time I've beefed up my characters a bit and I'm going in with some items, actually you might be in the world for an hour or 2. You know, running around it, getting all of the items to beat the 3 bosses to then progress kind of further. So it's one where there's definitely, as I say, there's definitely some good things in this, but it needs refinement to kind of get me to want to get to that point.
It sounds like it could, very much become a Returnal, which was very much loved 2 years ago. Well, just over a year ago or whatever. But yeah, all I've heard, all I've seen. I didn't play the first game, but I heard that was challenging.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a roguelike. That was just like, oh, was it? I'm not sure. Or was it just
Hyperlight
like...
Drifter, it was in that.
Right.
Oh God, what's the other game that's really similar to it? So Hyperlight Drifter is that it's kind of top down. It's not quite isometric. It is more sort of that 2.5 kind of view, and you were in a world and you had to basically move through. Oh, it's what did we recently have that came out, like Death's Door or Tunic, or you know, it's basically that, where it is a bit of a roguelike in that if you die, I think you have to do all 4 bosses again. But you basically move through an environment, beat some enemies, kill a boss. Move through the next sort of environment, beat some enemies, kill the boss, and do that to unlock a door or a gate. I don't remember off the top of my head that much.
Yeah.
But you know, and Hyperlight Breaker is very similar in that sort of sense. But as you've had with some games recently, like Helldivers, you know, they've changed the view and
Risk of
made
Rain or something.
exactly. They've changed that perspective on the game. I don't know whether for the better or not yet with Hyperlight Breaker versus Drifter. I really enjoyed Hyperlight Drifter. I didn't finish it because it was a hard game. And I think I played that on PS4, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, it's actually looking at the Steam page for Drifter. Came out in 2016. So, Hyperlight
Oh yeah,
Breaker was released
repeat.
nearly
Oh,
10 years
yeah.
later. They have made a
Mm,
game in between the two, Solar Ash, that one, which I
mhm.
never played. But Breaker looks much more like Solar Ash with a
Yeah.
Hyperlight Drifter kind of palette to
Mm.
it. Um,
And I've seen that, like, the community is not too thrilled with it. Probably coming off high expectations of the first game and maybe even Solar Ash, which was, different genre, but still,
mhm.
seemingly a, you know, well-liked game. But the developers seem committed to, refine those things whilst it's in early access. So,
Yep,
um, yeah, hopefully just turns into a success story. A bit of a rocky launch, and then yeah, just turns into a Returnal, a Risk of Rain 2, a Hades kind of like
absolutely. Yeah,
success
yeah.
story. So fingers crossed for it.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it was either today or yesterday. I got an email. They've just put out like a roadmap for sort of what they're looking to implement, what they're looking to change. I
mhm.
think they've taken a lot of feedback on, and if you go on Steam at the moment, it's in mixed reviews. But the
Yeah.
first one that comes up, which was put out on the 16th of January, so quite early in its sort of life. Um, they open up by saying this is more feedback for the devs than it is a review for players. So I
Yeah.
think probably the reviews at the moment are being used in that sort of way to actually
Right.
speak to the developers rather than say some formal forms on the website or feedback in the way that they would sort of take it. The developer again has come back to that review on Steam to say, you've raised some very good suggestions, some of which aligns exactly with other people's critiques. So they're
Mhm.
obviously taking a lot of this on board, really, really jumping in. But
Which is
it's
what they'll expect from early access, really. That's the whole point of it, I guess. Yeah.
It is. What I find interesting, a game like this, where it's a bit of a genre shift, or at least a bit of a
Mm,
shift in terms of the how the game kind of exists, makes sense for something to go in early access. What
mhm.
I don't understand is I read that again, it's not early access, but Civ 7 is almost being treated as if it's in early access.
In
Like
what
they've
way?
released a game, it's a
Well,
60 quid game, and they're like, we'll take feedback on board and listen to our players, and then we'll look to implement changes and things. It's like, what? Like,
well, from what we were
just,
talking about a few weeks ago, it seems like nobody's ever happy with any Civ.
well,
So, maybe that's par for the course.
maybe.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
So, like, we've done this 7 times now. We know that none of you are going to be happy. But if history repeats itself, it will be eventually. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
And it's
yeah.
it's interesting because they had it released Civ 7 released on the 10th of Feb, but they'd already issued patch 3 by the 12th of February. So there's a day one patch on the 10th. They probably bashed one out for the 11th, and then they've got another one coming. That went out on the 12th of Feb. So it's quick. They're at least something like Firaxis. They've
Mm,
got a lot of people working for them that they can probably respond to things quite quickly. I would imagine that the Hyperlight Breaker dev is Heart Machine is maybe a little bit smaller and maybe not so
mm,
quick to do things, which is why
mhm,
you put your roadmap out. You say absolutely, we can see this is a problem. We think we'll be able to fix it within the next 2 weeks, and we'll issue a patch kind of at the end of Feb, which will deal with these things. We think great.
mhm,
And then here is the rest of the roadmap for what we want to implement, how we want to change things, stuff that's going to take us more time to deal with. So they're talking to the community, Heart Machine, and I think Hyperlight Breaker, as you say, Lucy, if it can be sort of get to the point where you're like a Hades and get to that sort of successful element by taking on board those critiques and items, and or even just doing a bit of self-critiquing, not just taking everything sort of the community says, but being like, great, actually, if we were to, 100 people have asked for this, if we brought that in, that fundamentally breaks what we're trying to do with our game. So we don't
Yes,
want to do that.
you don't want to democratize your development, but you
Mm.
do want to get feedback on especially decisions earlier on that you will be harder to undo, or
Mm.
suggestions that you didn't think of. Speaking of Hades 2 Electric Boogaloo, I haven't heard anything about that in ages, but it's been in early access for what, at least a year?
Yeah, I think people were hot on
Um,
it, but I think it'll probably just have that splash. Well, probably not as
I
big
mean,
of a
my problem
splash
is
as the first game, but it's a sequel. It's a bit hard to get that, and even in early access, like I'm surprised the first game had that much of a splash after it was in early
it
access for a year. So,
I think
mm.
with the first game, it was sufficiently unique, and a lot had to do with that aesthetic, which was there early on, and then when they added the voice acting, it just like compounded it because it's. But you don't get that same. No one's ever done this before because it's like,
yeah,
I'm here because
Mm.
you did this before.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
with what was I gonna say? My other problem is like I liked the finished product a lot. I really really liked Hades. I don't have any urge. I know this. If everyone took this opinion, it wouldn't allow the thing to be as good as Hades 1 was. But I don't want to play it until it's done. Like I want to play the polished version because I know they can
Mhm.
polish really well. But part of that polish was early access. But luckily, not everyone has this opinion, right? But I think that's another reason why this particular early access game won't. I don't think it will have as much like until they're really close, maybe where people start to get impatient and are just like, I'll just try it. It's
Mm.
almost done, and then they'll gush about it on. Oh wait, we don't have any
Yeah,
games journalism
yeah,
anymore. Um,
Well, hey, so Hades
yeah.
2 released not about 9 months ago in May of last year. It
Oh,
currently,
that long ago.
yeah, it's a very positive in all of its reviews, of which there are 56,000.
oh, okay. So yeah, I'm
Jesus
definitely not.
Christ.
It's 50, how many reviews are on
That's
Hades 1?
nuts.
I know it's been out for a while, but I'm just
Oh, on
curious.
on the original Hades.
Which games get that many reviews?
Hades
Yeah.
has
Mm.
just over 250,000
That is
reviews.
So that's
insane.
actually
That is
quite
insane.
good for their early access. In 9 months, they've got a fifth of the entirety of the thing that was a global hit and has been out for years.
5 years now.
Yeah.
5 years. Or
Like
four
most
and a half
games
years. Yeah.
don't even get 1,000 reviews.
Absolutely.
Just like what? That's it.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
insane.
Hyperlight
I bet
Breaker
it's just all
currently
just
is.
thirsty people saying like how fit, Sisyphus was though. Rolling that ball up the
Get
hill or
into Roll the
whatever.
Stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, Hyperlight Breaker currently at just over 2,500 reviews as well. So reasonable for a game that came out
Mhm.
today. Oh no, not today. A month ago. 1 month
Yeah.
it's been out for. But I just on Hades because I remember I played the early access. A year before it kind of released, and
Mhm.
I think it was one of my top 10, but like really high up, just as the early access release version for I think 2019. Um,
Mhm.
but that released in early access on Epic Game Store,
Yeah, he
not
had
on
that big
Steam.
announcement at like the Game Awards, and
Yeah.
that
And then it
obviously gave
released
it.
when it was full release. I
Yeah.
think it came on Steam, which is why it had such a big impact because a bunch of people hadn't really
And
heard
Switch.
of it or weren't using Epic Game Store at that time. There was a big backlash against EGS at that kind of time, back in 2019, 2018.
Yeah, it's
So
still bad, but not as bad as it
not
used to be.
quite as bad.
We have become inured to like, oh, Alan Wake 2 is only on Epic Games Store. It's like, cool. Sucks, but
Yeah,
all
we'll go there
exclusivity
and play it.
sucks. But it's like we're not going to send death threats anymore. Well, the most of us won't.
Most of us, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, Hades 2, I think released in early access on Steam, which again is maybe why it's partly got such a big amount of reviews and things like that within that kind of 9 month period potentially, because the first game kind of limited where it was in terms of its early access version. So
Mhm.
Hyperlight Breaker coming on, it's kind of one of those games. It really is not going to have that exclusivity to something like EGS. It's going to be on Steam, and I think it's building a community at least
Yeah.
around itself, which is really good.
Mhm. Well, hope the
So yeah,
best for it.
yeah, and we'll see how it goes. It's definitely one I kind of keep up with. As soon as I know that they've released a patch, I'll go back to it for an hour, do a few more runs, those kinds of things. I think it's one where because I haven't put too much time in it, I wouldn't be fussed by like full game state resets and things. Where actually
Mhm.
it's like, cool, sorry, we've just wiped the the run that you were in because we've had to start again because we've had so many major changes to the game. Again, wouldn't be that fussed. I've not put not invested too much time into it, so I think that's how I'll probably experience
even if you
it.
if that's a thing that you can't help but feeling, you shouldn't play early access games, especially things like roguelikes where they're tweaking loops, right? Like if it's like a first person shooter that's like plot based, and like they broke the quest line you're in, but you can play other quests, sure, right? Play Fallout 3 early access, if that was a thing.
It's just a character spinning on the ground, basically. Yeah. Just not moving anywhere.
Oh, so like what it was probably like at release? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Good. Is there anything else anyone wants to pick up on this week?
Yeah. Monument Valley 3, I finished it.
Oh, great.
And I was quite annoyed by it because in like the last few levels, it got good. It wasn't just like a tutorial. And then it's like, oh, no more levels, but there will be in a couple of months. Stay subscribed to Netflix. And it's like, no.
Oh, that.
I will not.
Fuck. I forgot it was a Netflix. So like you didn't have to pay for it, but they're like bleeding out content such that you need to maintain your prescription.
Yeah, and
subscription.
And like the first and second game they had like DLC, which was like which was nice. I think there was one where it was like most of the efforts went to charity, and it's like this is nice, this is cool. I want more of this game, but this very much felt like that it was just like a tutorial for 75% of the game, and then in the last 25% or so, it's like, oh, here are the levels that make you think, that aren't just, by the numbers, second screen-itis, where it's like I don't even have to pay attention to the game whilst I'm watching Castlevania Nocturne Season 2.
Oh shit,
which
I haven't
was
finished
genuinely
Season 1
what
yet.
I did, because it required no thought. I was like, okay, my time's running up on my Netflix. Let's knock out these two things at the same time.
Fair.
And it's like, no, give me an actual good puzzle game where my brain is engaged. And I feel like for the most of that game, it didn't do that, and it's disappointing. And yeah, I have thoughts and disappointments because I really love those first two games, and it's like
yes,
this. It's like I get it. I get what this game is doing. Even if I came into it never playing the first two, it's like I don't need 8 levels telling me. Just basically, I don't even have to think. Yes, it's beautiful. It's very pretty, but like some of those later levels, it's like, oh, I'm having to think. Having to think which way I turn this and which order I do this, and yeah,
which is what you want from your puzzle game.
I do.
Yeah,
You do, especially if it's like I paid 1 month worth of Netflix to play this game and watch Castlevania. I want a bit more bang for my buck, rather than 8 levels of tutorial. Yeah, so that's disappointing, but yeah, I guess if you got Netflix, watch Friends whilst you're playing it or something, because it's not going to engage your brain for a long time. But yeah, maybe when they put out all the levels, I might dip back into it. Because if they're like the later levels, then yeah, I'm very much interested. If it's more of the same basic paint by numbers puzzles that are in the beginning, then I'm just like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I haven't gone back to it. I don't know, we said sort of, yes, I may go back to it. I haven't. It's just not really something I've kind of really wanted to go back to. I think I've been I have gone back to No Man's Sky a little bit over the last sort of few weeks, actually progressing the kind of the slight story element.
I've heard that they've put a lot of work in that. I have not played that since like month 3 of initial release, so it's not the same game, and they've done like all of the things. People who could stayed with it have nothing but glowing things. The stink is off the company because they just like kept
Yeah.
grinding away and making the thing work. I don't know where the money comes from, except probably all the
That
people who
initial
bought it.
launch.
Yeah,
Who were duped. And it's like, I can now say about Hello Games, I'm like, because I remember there was a point where it's like, look at us, we've turned it around. It's like, you're still in the stink zone, you're still in the blast zone. Don't
yeah,
be too confident and too cocky. But now I can be like, okay, you deserve it now. You know?
yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, you
I
can be
jumped back in
cocky
because
and strut. Yeah.
they released the new Worlds update, where ultimately they've redone a bunch of the planets and the environments and those kinds of things, and they've introduced almost like deep sea environments and things like that
Oh,
now.
cool.
And where before I was kind of going into shallower kind of waters and not very deep, you'd go down like 10, 15 meters, and that's kind of the depth that it would kind of get to, unless you were mining underground under the water and stuff. And there'd be a few fish. And then I'm like, oh, I wonder what Worlds is like. Let's have a look. I'll go in the sea. They said there's better sea environments. I'll go in the sea, and instantly came up against like a giant squid, and was like, ah, shit. And it just ignored me and swam away. I'm like, cool. Goodbye, giant squid. Please just disappear into the distance. But it's a fucking beautiful game as well. They're constantly updating particle physics, environmental physics, weather effects, and all this sort of stuff. And it looks
I just
so
remember that
good.
one video where it was like the Jurassic Park. Do, 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 do. It was like, oh, what the trailer looked like, and then it's like someone playing the theme on the harmonica,
Yeah.
and these blocky brontosaurus walking about. Oh,
With like two tiny
so
arms
good.
out the top of it, sort of
Yeah,
like wah, wah, wah.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, good on them. Good on them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of one of those. Again, it's a chill game. There's no real sort of sense of urgency. Kind of, you can get into some encounters which have a bit of, a bit of a tense nature to them. But there's nothing massive kind of in it,
Mm.
unless you're doing sort of expeditions and things like that, which I'm not. I'm just exploring ridiculous space environments and dead planets and
Mhm.
shit like that.
Mm.
And yeah, running through to do the first, because I never actually went through the whole kind of storyline element of it, where the whole thing is a simulation or whatever it is, and it resets every now and again, and you're the one who does the resetting. And I'm like, cool, I want to go and do the reset now. Let's actually progress through to that. And I've just upgraded my ship to go to a system which you have to have a specific kind of engine for to get the items that you need to then craft the thing to reset the system. So I'm like right at the end of that. And who knows if I'll pick it back up after I've done it. I've built some bases, I've done some things, I've experienced maybe everything that game kind of has to offer now over its 9 year kind of life
It
cycle.
might be.
Hmm.
Is it more than that? I don't even know. I can't even
Um,
remember when that game came out.
Steam says 2016, which seems about right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I
it's
mean,
50
that,
quid on
yeah.
Steam.
Still,
50.
wow.
Yeah,
I mean,
50
that's the
quid.
problem
I
with
know there's a
like
lot in there,
eh,
but
Good.
still.
MSRP doesn't really change, right? Like, so if they don't put it on permasale,
Sure.
When did it come out
Yeah.
on PlayStation? Because did it come out simultaneously on
yes,
PC?
yes, because
It
I
Oh,
bought
must
it
have
on
done.
PC.
Mm.
okay.
And this was
You
back.
can.
Alright.
I remember this specifically because this was back when I cobbled together a way of making my MacBook Air, which had a decent processor and 16 gigs of RAM, which was big at the time.
It was decent back then, yeah.
I figured out how to through the Thunderbolt port rig up a card that would act as an eGPU, so I could play games on the laptop because I had just moved back from Canada
Yes.
couldn't move my big PC.
Yep.
So I just took the card and was like, I will fucking figure this out. I've read enough weird tech. And I made it work, and it was janky as hell, and it
Oh,
was on
that's
my
so
13-inch MacBook Air screen. But I played when I say I played played it for a couple months. It was on a MacBook Air with a very loud GPU right beside.
well done.
Yeah. Now they
Pats on the
sell this
back for
stuff as
that.
enclosures and things. versus finding the right fucking card some random company used for some other reason, and like, yeah.
Nice.
Again,
Very good.
no, there was no way anyone could have figured out I had ADHD at the time.
Oh, what a good place to finish on this week. The 10-year-old tech corner and self-discovery. Let's roll back round to our beers. Adil, we'll come to you first for the vocation.
Yeah, it didn't drift that much from my initial assumptions. I was correct that like it being getting a bit more used to the sweetness allowed, particularly the finish, to get just the bitterness to come through a bit more, and the tropical flavors as well. But on the whole, it still like if you were thinking of the taste curve, it still like finishes quite sweet, etc. But what I noticed was that like sweet slash a bit citrus sweet, that was most of that sweet, the sweet part of the finish became not much dampered, but it became rounder, so it was more like tropical fruit and citrus. And then that slightly bitter. Again, I didn't really finish with pininess at any point. That never came to the fore like the tin promised. But it did become much. The breadth of that finish was a lot better. I don't know if you, for those of you watching the video, you will see that I started taking sips way less often. This because the finish had got more depth, so I didn't really need to replenish. Well, when I first had a sip, it felt kind of, I get sweet and there's a little bit of bitterness, and it was like there's more than one dimension. Great, okay, but like I'm done with that, and now it's like, oh no, I'm getting a depth to that sweetness, and that bitterness is playing a bit more of a role, and so I'm happy to like let that sit for a longer period of time before I'm like, either I'm thirsty or I want more taste, right? And that's a very different way of drinking this beer than it was at the top.
Yeah, nice. Remind me what it was called.
Doppelganger by Vocation Brewery.
Nice. And where you said you got it in a supermarket, which
Morrison's.
Okay, cool,
Mm-hmm.
nice. All right, I'll take a trip there over the weekend, so maybe I'll take a look and see if it's
Yeah,
down
so
here.
it's a lovely
as
Need
well.
purple
to go
can.
buy some coffee. Might look out for it.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weirdly
That's
plain
very
art for
Doctor
Tiny.
Who like kind of text,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. Should be a Dalek on it.
Yeah.
Doppelganger.
The putty then, Lucy. Any final thoughts?
hmm Yeah, as you said, like once my palate like acclimatized to it and got used to that kind of dry finish, it didn't seem so dry, and it's just like something that I mean, I've still got almost a third of a pint left, like just been nursing it, and it's like got enough flavor from like that underlying sweetness as well as like the very piney, like kind of floral, oniony. It tastes like fresh greenery. Those like all kind of like sing harmoniously, and it's like it's it's very much one that I can just nurse and sip over time. Yeah, it's good. I mean, we say it every year. It's good. It's not the best thing ever, but it's very good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got this tiny little sort of swig left, and it does dissipate a little, or kind of the flavour does dull down slightly. The pininess isn't coming through quite as much. That sweetness is dulled down a little bit. It's not quite as mangoey as it was, or it's got a bit riper, and those kind of more the sort of oniony notes are coming through a little bit more on the end of this. And the last swig is there's not a huge amount to that last bit. So it definitely my palate kind of got used to it that little bit more. But
Yes.
if I saw it on tap, if I was out somewhere, not that I go anywhere, but if I was, I might pick it up and get a third or two thirds or something just to see what it was like on draft. So yeah, I
I
drink
picked
it
up two
again.
cans, and I'm not mad about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll very much enjoy it again.
Yeah, good. So, dear listener, if you have future drinking putty, if you're looking forward to the tea, which will come out in several weeks' time, let us know. Go to outoflives.net, comment on the on the post that we put up there for the podcast episode. Do it on your podcast service of choice and talk to us through there, or leave us a review if you have 30 seconds, 5 minutes to do so. You can also go to Out of Lives on YouTube and talk to us there. We are over at Blue Sky at Out of Lives, and it's Out of Lives Net, it might be. I'm at Nova 47 now, no underscore over on Blue Sky. Adil, you are?
At the Omniarch.
And Lucy, you are still on Twitter at the moment?
Yeah, because I just want to practice how to upload my videos from YouTube using a script. So I was like, I'll leave it just up there for just for that.
Okay.
But yeah, I have considered like, why am I even posting to this hell site? But yeah, I'm gonna use it for just practicing stuff, scripts.
Yeah, fair. Nice.
That's why it's there. That's its only function at the moment.
Just
Because
a
I'm sure if I dug
repository.
into I'm sure if I dug into the analytics from my YouTube, I don't know if there's any kickback from an uptick in terms of views posting to Twitter. Something I could look into, but haven't yet.
And probably won't.
No, it was like, okay, start of the year, just make a script, and it was like, it's February 14th, and it's like, oh yeah, I should have done this. But it's one of those things that just got away from me. So
Yeah, absolutely fair.
yeah.
Absolutely fair. And if you want to come
Yeah.
and talk to us, anyone who is watching, who is listening, come to our Discord as well. You can shoot one of us a message, and we will send you a link. Thank you for joining us this week. They've been the games, they've been the beers. That's been what we've been up to. We will see you very soon. We've been tanked up. Good night.
Bye.
Ciao.
www.outoflives.net